So here is the second video in this series of the Vaughn SLR for pads. Whole set will be reviewed. I talked about this if you watched the netcam footage one. This one is the thigh rise test. So as a reminder, the thigh rise test is at about 65 miles per hour for the puck machine. This isn't a perfectly scientific test. It's very, very hard to get consistency on it. I want it to be me and my natural butterfly just dropping down how the pads would sit, and in the RVH as well. But the angles aren't always perfect on it, and seal is generally as good as you can get on this flat ground, on the ground it's on. And it's as close as I can kind of replicate in a game situation for all intents and purposes. Before we get into more of the details on this pad, these pads, this video, all the reviews, all the content on the SLR4 stuff wouldn't have been possible without the help of Just Hockey. Just Hockey is working with me, and there's a link down below in this video in the comments, as well as in the description, and it will have a coupon code. So if you want to buy SLR4 stuff from them, you get a percentage off, and I get nothing from that. There's no kickback or anything. I don't want anything from doing these videos. I just want the ability to test gear and to make content like that. I figured this would be the best way for people to kind of show their support with Just Hockey, so I can keep doing videos like this and making more content, as well as getting a solid deal on a set of pretty decent pads, which you'll have to watch the review to see all of it for that. Okay, so for the results of this test, this is basically what I was going to be expecting from these pads. I tested another set of SLR4s before this. This set is very close in spec wise to the SLR3s that I have. I talk in the review a lot about kind of how the calf and the knee are kind of revamped a bit to fix some tilting things on the SLR3, as well as to give overall more stability. But the core of the pad itself is pretty much very close to each other. This one is a bit stiffer than what my SLR3s are now, because mine are used. So when I got it right away, it was probably as stiff as what this one is on the core. And as you can see, it still does bend, and you're gonna see bending on it, especially from the pucks. The big thing about the pad performance on here, and I'll show it off kind of right here, is there's this gap here as well. So when that knee part bends and a puck hits the top up here, it's kind of forcing that closed, as you can see. And that is the big flex point. There is another flex point right here because the knee part keeps everything solid. So when a puck really hits that top piece flexes too. This piece right here is doing most of the flexing of the pad. So it's kind of how you kind of expect, just how pads work in general with pucks and thigh rises and everything. But this performed kind of the way that I was expecting. I talk about this little foam piece in the review as well, and talk about how it increases the seal. You can see on through this video, pucks kind of get stuck on this a bunch, and it almost feels like that rounded medial roll on old Premier pads where they kind of just sucked in pucks. This kind of feels like something slightly similar, maybe not as effective as that, but it slides a lot better. It's kind of interesting seeing how that worked out here. So I'll show the test and the results of it, and then I'll kind of break down some more going through there and talking about it a little bit more. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now, and I've had multiple stuff from them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an ANSI level 6 for cut resistance on here. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description. So check them out. I always recommend them. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off, and it helps support the channel so I can keep making videos and making more content. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without buying anything, check out links in the description to Patreon, buy me a coffee. Everything through there comes again back into the channel so I can make more content and doing real reviews. Go again. Wait. another? Yeah. Yep. Wait. One more. Now, one thing I want to call out about this, and I bring it up a lot, but it has to be said, this isn't the perfect scientific test. I try to get this as accurate as possible. I try to get it as consistent as possible. Puck machine isn't the most accurate thing in the world, and it's kind of hard to get it in the same spot all the time. So I'm trying to make this as best as I can in terms of kind of what would happen on the ice type thing. Now, also keep in mind for this test, this is the Vaughn SLR4 pad, obviously, but it is a stock retail pad. So it doesn't have my custom specs on it, and it is what they're making for basically the masses and the general public. For me, I would prefer a stiffer pad than this, but it is their stiffer line, and honestly, it performs about how I expect on it. Most people don't like the completely rebarred stiff pads that I have, where they don't move at all. They want a bit of give in it, and they want the pad to flex more. This pad certainly is stiffer than what SLR pads stock came in the past. This is really close to my SLR3 set, which was stiffened compared to their stock SLR3s. So this one is obviously closer to what I would prefer, but it's still not the extremes that I would prefer. But for the general person and general goalie out there, this is probably going to work better for them than what my preferences are, because obviously I have my own preferences, everyone does. This is a stiff pad, but not the stiffest there is. Any of the pucks that really go towards the tips of pads here are probably going to go in. You can see most of the flexing happen right below the knee block and then right above the knee block. The knee block itself acts as an anchor, and you can really see this in the RVH spot here, but you can also see it in the butterfly spot where the pucks that hit the kind of tips and fold inwards, the knee block section of the pad is totally staying straight and like not really moving all that much. It's just the break below, and the actual top part of it is where you can see that movement. Now in the butterfly, the one caveat here is this is kind of awkward because you can kind of see how the tips hit each other a bunch on here. I'm trying to do this as close as I can in a butterfly when I'm on ice, which is me just dropping and getting wide-ish. It's as wide as I get on ice basically, and just where my legs are comfortable in that position. So sometimes there's some awkwardness here where, like you can see on my right pad, sometimes hits the left pad and it gets anchored. That's obviously not the point of these pads, and that is also not the ideal test, but that happens sometimes, and it happens sometimes in games as well. But you can see in the butterfly test where even these are stiffer, you can see the thigh rise really kind of fold inwards on here and a few kind of squeak in between. I don't believe any get in the actual net in the butterfly test here, but they definitely get behind the pad, which is an easy cover, not all that bad overall. I also mentioned multiple times on the review that kind of thicker part for the sliding edge, how it kind of stops pucks and holds it in place. You can see that a few times in this, so if you haven't, please go back and check it out, but it should be noticeable where it kind of gets stuck. Kind of interesting idea on there. Overall, like I said, these pads performed exactly how I expected. They're not crazy stiff, they do fine, and they're probably a pretty solid option for most of the public who don't want something as crazy stiff as I do. Bauer noticed that with the mock and went softer for the shadow, so it's probably where more of the trend is going.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.